This is a massive deal, weeks in the making, Alex.
It certainly is, if not longer, Pam. We have been waiting for more than 13 months since the last ceasefire deal and since the last time there was an exchange of hostages and prisoners for this moment. It appears that this deal is imminent, if not done already. We're reporting that Hamas has agreed to the deal. There was certainly an expectation from the Israeli side that they would agree to a deal. All of this, of course, brokered after intensive negotiations with the mediators, the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. So this is obviously extremely welcome news after some 14 months of fighting. And what we expect to happen if indeed this deal goes into effect, is that over the course of some 6 weeks, we would see more than 30 Israeli hostages released by Hamas and other groups who are holding them in Gaza. I don't think we have the exact number of Palestinian prisoners who would be released by Israel. And then there are a bunch of other different elements that would go into effect. Palestinians would be allowed to go home in the Gaza Strip. More humanitarian aid would get to go in. But I think the point here, Pam, is that after weeks of feverish work on the U.S. side with both Biden administration officials and officials from the incoming Trump team working in coordination with each other, they and the other mediators have managed to get the Israelis and Hamas, it appears, across the finish line, where we are going to get a truce, a pause in this fighting. One thing I really want to emphasize is this does not mean the end of this war. This means a break in this war. Hopefully this break will last at least 6 weeks, if not longer. Hopefully all of these people will come home who are supposed to come home. But there are big questions about what would happen after this first phase of a ceasefire, which, as it stands now, and this plan has been in place for quite some time, since President Biden laid it out in May. This is expected to last around 6 weeks. So we're still waiting for final word, I believe, from all of the parties. But this certainly seems imminent, if not a done deal already. I
want to go back to MJ Lee at the White House. I believe we're reconnected. MJ, what can you tell us about this plan?
Well, Pam, according to a senior administration official telling CNN, it is done, it is confirmed, meaning that Hamas has given that final green light, agreeing to the ceasefire and hostages release deal that had been on the table for a while. And based on all of our reporting, we knew that this really was the final step that all of the parties were waiting for, that it really came down to this group agreeing to the parameters that everybody else had agreed to. Part of the reason we have been so cautious in our reporting all of this time is precisely that, that in the end, it came down to Hamas giving this final green light. And when we have spoken to at least U.S. officials involved in these discussions and with knowledge of the situation, they always pointed to the fact that it was impossible to make any kind of predictions with certainty, because at the end of the day, they were dealing with Hamas. But again, here we have it, confirmation from a senior administration official that Hamas has finally given the green light, and there is a deal for a ceasefire in Gaza and for the hostages to be released. This is a deal, as you were talking about just now with Alex, that has been elusive for the Biden administration and for the U.S. for so many months. You know, we had that initial ceasefire back more than a year ago, around Thanksgiving, 2 Thanksgivings ago, when a number of hostages came out. That ceasefire ended up being temporary, only lasting a number of days. And really, since then, U.S. officials have been working to get a second part of the ceasefire in place, but it had been so challenging. There were so many moments throughout the last year plus where we reported that things looked like they were maybe getting close, that we had reason for optimism based on our sources and our reporting. But even in these final days, you know, everybody we had talked to were so careful to almost not get their hopes up too much. I think we should spend a good deal amount of time talking about Donald Trump and the incoming president's desire to get this done, that had been really so decisive in the end in helping to get this across the finish line.
Certainly. And just for our viewers, just to remind you, in terms of the numbers, Hamas and its allies hold 94 people taken from Israel on October 7th, 2023. The majority are civilians. 34 are confirmed dead, but the number is almost certainly higher than that. 81 are men and 13 women, and there are 2 under the age of 5. And of course, there's going to be phases, as Alex had laid out. Some will be released in the first phase during the expected ceasefire. I want to go straight to Jeremy Diamond, who is on the ground there in Israel, to get the Israel part of this, because there's a process in Israel, right? Jeremy, walk us through that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Pam. And first of all, I think it's important to note that for the last 2 days, the Israeli government officials who I've been speaking with have been saying this is in Hamas's hands. We need Hamas to say yes in order to get to a deal. And that is indeed what has now happened. And so for all intents and purposes, we do indeed now have an agreement between these parties to go into a ceasefire that is expected to last 6 weeks, during which you will see 33 Israeli hostages released, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails in exchange, the much needed entry of humanitarian aid. But the process that now needs to happen here in Israel in order for this deal to actually become a reality, this agreement will now go from the Israeli prime minister. He will take this agreement before his security cabinet, which is a smaller group of his governing coalition, some of his top ministers primarily involved in security affairs. They will then give an up or down vote on this. If it is approved, it will then go to the full cabinet for approval, and only then will the Israeli government be able to officially sign off on this deal and begin marching towards implementation. There is one additional hurdle before implementation, and that is giving the individuals who were impacted by those Palestinian prisoners who will be released the opportunity to petition the Supreme Court against their release. That is largely a formality. The Israeli government has enormous leverage, and the prime minister in particular has enormous freedom to release those prisoners as it relates to security matters. So that will likely be a 24-hour period that will go by. And that likely takes us most likely to Sunday, which is what I've been told is the most likely date when this deal will actually be implemented on the ground. That will mean that we will see the first Israeli hostages in more than a year be released as part of a diplomatic agreement here for these hostages to come out of Gaza. You will see the release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. And in addition to that, of course, you will see Israeli jets, Israeli troops on the ground lower their weapons and for the first time in over a year, you will finally see the guns be silenced here, and the people of Gaza will finally get a much-needed reprieve from the military assault that they have been undergoing over the last year.
All right, thank you so much, Jeremy. I want to go to CNN foreign policy reporter Barak Ravid. What can you tell us about this deal and when the Hamas prisoners will be released, those held hostage, I should say, and the Palestinian prisoners as well? What more can you tell us about that?
So I think one of the most important things that our viewers need to know right now is that there are 7 Americans held by Hamas in Gaza. 2 of them are expected to be released in this initial phase of the hostage deal. One of them is U.S. citizen Keith Siegel. A video of him from captivity was aired a few months ago, and he is in the list for this first phase. Another U.S. citizen is Sagid Ekelchen, another U.S. citizen who is on the list of the 33 hostages expected to be released in this initial phase. And I think what is very interesting is that this deal has been in the making for months, since President Biden laid out his plan, his proposal last May, and U.S. negotiators, Qatari negotiators, Egyptian negotiators, Israeli negotiators have been working on this for months. I think the breakthrough came when the deal with Hezbollah on the ceasefire in Lebanon happened, because then Hamas in Gaza understood that it has been left alone and that no one's coming to save them. And since then, what I hear from Israeli news officials is since then, they saw a change in how Hamas is negotiating this deal, and this is how we got to this point.